Hello YouTube, I hope you're doing well. Today we're on code.org, we're on Unit 7, Lesson 4, and we're going to be looking at Part 2 in a moment. We're currently on Part 1 because it features the app running in entirety, and we want our app on Part 2 to run just like we see on Part 1. It says to play with the rock, paper, scissors app and pay attention to what does each button do, and how does the screen get updated after clicking each button. I'm going to click rock first. We see the computer chose paper. It says computer wins, and it updated the counter over here to be 1. When I chose paper, the computer chose rock. The text up here was updated to say you win, and now we're at 1 at 1. Let's see if we can get a draw. When it's a draw, the text is updated above to say draw, and no score is updated on the right-hand side. Let's go ahead and move on to Part 2. The instructions tell us to build the rock, paper, scissors app using the activity guide to help you plan. When you're done, submit your work. If you haven't already done so, I would encourage you to look at the activity guide because it's going to help you plan for this app. I'll go ahead and throw up step 3 of the paper just so you can see what we're going to be working on today. The first thing that we're told to do is to write the code for the find icon, and then notice that the list of possible icons is available on line 2. So if we look at line 2, we can see our 3 icons. We have rock, paper, scissors. Before we go to that function, let's just go ahead and look at some of the lines of code here to kind of make sense of what's going on, because they've given us quite a bit of code to use, and we're not going to have to build this from scratch. We also have this choices list of rock, paper, scissors. Lines 8 and 9 have a player score and a computer score. Both of those are set at 0. Then we have on events, the rock button, the paper button, and the scissors button. Depending on what you click, it's going to run the update screen function, and it's going to pass along that argument, so rock, paper, or scissors. Right here we see our update screen function, and player choice is being passed. Here we have a variable being created for computer choice, and it says random choose, and it's choices. If we scroll down, we can see that that is this function right here. Currently, it's just returning list at 0. Then we have the winner variable being created, and it's decide winner, and we have the player choice and the computer choice being sent over there. That is a function that we're going to have to update. In this area of the function, we see that the player output image is being updated and the computer output image is being updated. And it's based upon the find icon and the player choice and find icon computer choice. That's the first thing that we were told that we need to do. So we'll look at that in a minute. And then we have this if statement here, and it's looking to see if it's a draw, and if it is, it's going to update the text on the screen to say draw. Else if, it's going to look to see is the winner equal to player. If it is, it's going to update the text at the top to say you win. It's going to update the player score by 1. And then it's going to set the property of the player score output, which is this, to show the new player score. Else if the computer is the winner, it's going to say computer wins at the top. It's going to add 1 to the computer score, and then it's going to set the property on the right of the computer decision with the new computer score. The first thing that we're told to do is that we should look at this find icon function, and we need to fix it. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it icon. Within this if function, we're going to do an if else. Our first check is going to be to see is the icon name equal to rock. I'll click out of that. So icon name is being passed. If we scroll up to see where we see find icon, right here we have player's choice with the find icon. Well, what's player's choice? Well, player's choice is found right here, which is being passed down from the buttons that were selected on the app screen. So we have this being sent here, which is sent here, and then this is being sent here, and then in our find icon, it's being sent here. So our first check is we're looking to see, is it rock? Well, if it is, we need to update the variable icon. And it's going to be icon And if we scroll up, we're going to look at our icons list. So we're looking here to set this icon at index 0 is rock, icon at index 1 is paper, and icon at index 2 is scissors. So if it's rock, we want to set it to be icons at index 0. If that's not true, we're going to look at icon name again, and this time we're going to look for paper. If it is, it'll be icon is equal to icons at index 1. And if that's not the case, we want to look again. This time it'll be icon name is equal to scissors. Icons index 2. And we'll remove that last little bit. We want it to return our variable icon. So we'll click and drag this out. The activity guide says that once we've completed this, we should check our code. And if it's working correctly, it's going to show the correct icon on the screen. So let's go ahead and click run. We can see that it works, so we've done this correct. The next thing we need to do is look at the random choose function. That's going to be this function right here. This is going to help set the computer icon. The first thing that I'm going to do is create a variable. I'm going to call it random icon. What is this random icon going to be set to? Well, we want it to be set to our choices above, so rock, paper, scissors. The question is, how do we get there? We want a random icon to be either rock, paper, or scissors. So let's look at how we're going to get there, because we're ultimately going to choose a random number from an index. So right here we have from the random choices we see list. Well, let's scroll back up, see if we can find those. So right here we see random choose. That's the function that we're working in. And we have choices. Well, what's choices? If we scroll up, right here we have our choices. It's this list, rock, paper, scissors. So we're going to look at the list length, knowing that that's where it's coming from. And that can be a little bit confusing to trace it back. We're going to drag in this. List is what we want. We're going to go to the math. We're going to choose random number. We want 0 as our minimum number. And then for our max number, we want list.length minus 1. So what we've done is we're going to choose a random icon from that list above that has rock, paper, scissors. And then what do we want? Well, we want to return random icon. So let's click and drag that out. And we'll type in random icon. The instructions say that once we've done this, that the computer should also be able to have a random icon chosen for it. So let's look. All right, as I was clicking, it kept showing the same one. That's not what we want. So we can see that the computer is now also generating an icon at random. We're then told that we need to write the code to make the decide winner function work as described. It says you should only be working inside that function. We're right here. We have decide winner, and we see a player choice and a computer choice. Within this function, we need to compare the player choice with the computer choice, and then based upon the selection, decide if it's a draw, if the computer wins, or if the person wins. The first thing that we're going to do within this function is create a variable. So let's declare a variable. We'll call it winner. Then what we're going to do is create an if statement. And it's going to have quite a few checks. The first one is going to be, is the player choice, is that equal to computer choice? If that's the case, we need to update a variable. It's going to be winner, and it's going to be equal to draw. We'll click the plus here. This time we're going to look to see if the player choice, rock, we're going to see if that beats the computer choice. Well, rock beats scissors. So it needs to say, is the player choice equal to rock and the computer choice Is that equal to scissors? If it is, we're going to set our variable winner to be equal to player. I'm going to do two other else ifs to check the player choice for paper versus the computer choice of rock, and the player choice of scissors compared to the computer choice of paper. If those match, the winner is going to be the player. Our else is going to be the computer because all other decisions would be computer. All right, let's sum up what we've done. So within our decide winner function, we've created a variable for winner. Then we've created an if statement. It's looking to see if the player choice and the computer choice are the same. If they are, that means that it's a draw. The next part of this if statement is going to look at three possible player choice decisions: rock, paper, and scissors. The first one's going to be to look at the player choice. Is it equal to rock? And the computer choice is equal to scissors. Rock beats scissors. So if that's the case, if both are true, then it's going to put down winner is equal to player. If that's not true, it's going to look next to see if the player choice is equal to paper and the computer choice is equal to rock. If both of those are true, then the outcome is winner is the player. If neither of those is true, it's going to look to see if the player choice is equal to scissors and if the computer choice is equal to paper. If that's true, then it's going to output winner equals player. And so if it's not a draw and none of these criteria come out as true, then it's going to put the computer as the winner. We then need to modify our return here to say the variable of winner. And so that'll spit back up into the app. It then tells us to test our code. So let's try it out. Computer wins the first one because paper beats rock. Let's try rock again. Second time we see that the computer chose scissors, rock beats scissors. Let's get a draw. All right, nothing was updated on the draw. So we can see as we click through these that we've been able to set the icons to the screen. We've been able to allow the computer to randomly choose an icon. We then wrote a statement that checked to see who the winner was, and because of the code that they gave us, that updates the score. In step 3, it says that we need to comment each of the functions explaining how you wrote the code. That's going to be important to do. Don't forget that step. Let's look at the extension ideas for this project. It says have the game end when one player gets to 10 wins. And it says keep track of the current streak of wins in the game. So let's go and reset our app. The app is keeping track of a score, and we're going to use that to determine if the player has reached 10 wins or not. So let's scroll up in our code till we find that. We see it right here. We don't see anything for draw because nobody's getting a point, but we do see it here where it says for the player when they win, we see player score plus plus. We see the same thing for the computer. So computer score gets plus plus if they win. What we're going to do is create an if statement that takes the player to a different screen if the player or the computer gets 10 wins. So if I go to design, we're going to create a new screen. So there's nothing special on this screen. You can go real fancy on this if you'd like. What I've done is I've created a space that says congratulations. Right here is where we're going to put either the person or the computer. And then we're going to give the player an option to play the game again. We call our button play again. We call this the winner label. So we'll need this information once we go back to the code. So we're going to create an if. And we're going to add that into this function just underneath where our score is being calculated. We're going to look to see is the player score the variable that's here. Is that greater than 9? If that is, we're going to update this screen. It's going to be text, and we're going to type in player. We'll add an else if to this. And this time we're looking to see is the computer score, if that is greater than 9. And if that's the case, we're going to go ahead and set the property here. This time we want it to say computer. And we can remove the else part of that. Something else that we need to add to both of these is to set the screen to this once the player score has reached 10 or the computer score has reached 10. Over here on the UI controls, I do not have a set screen. I'm going to go to show text. I'm going to do set screen. I should have renamed this to something other than screen 1. I didn't. It is easy enough to change, but we're going to leave this. And we're going to copy this line of code to our else if. So now we need to create an on click for this button that takes us back to our original game screen. So within the UI controls, if we click and drag this on click event, our ID is going to be play again. The click is fine. What do we want it to do? Well, we needed to set screen. We want it to be game screen. Let's test our app. We can see that I forgot quotes around my text here. Let's go ahead and retry this. So it says, congratulations, player. Let's see if our button works. It does. But here's something that I noticed. Right here, we have our score set at 7 and 10 still. We need this to reset. So let's scroll back up. On our play again button, let's reset some things. When this is clicked, I wanted to do two things. The first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to reset our scores for both the computer and for the player. I also want to reset these properties to be 0. So let's do that. Let's go to variables. So when that's clicked, both of those scores will be reset to 0. Let's go to UI controls. We're going to do 2 set properties. The first ID is going to be this. It's computer score output. I know it doesn't show all of this, but if you click design and click this, we'll see it. We want the text, and we'll set that to 0. The other one is player score output. This too will be text. Set at 0. Let's try it again. Okay, player 1. And we see it reset. That's cool. The last thing that we're told that we need to do for this extension is to keep track of the current streak of wins in the computer. There's a couple of ways that you could go about doing this. I'm going to go ahead and go to the design tab. And what I'm going to do is over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to keep streak for both the computer and for the player. I'm going to go ahead and start redesigning the screen, and then we'll talk again. I know that this doesn't look very pretty, but we'll use what we've created to keep track on the screen of what's going on. Let's go back to our code. The first thing that I want to do is I need to create 2 brand new variables. And we're going to place it right below here. The first one we'll call player streak. We'll set that to 0. And the other one we'll call is computer streak. And we'll set that to 0 as well. Let's go back to where we created that if statement for our player score. We're going to create an if statement down here let's go in and compare those two variables. So if we go to if, I'm going to drag that below. What am I looking for? If player streak is greater than computer streak. We're going to need an else here. Well, if this is true, we need to set two properties. What we're going to want to do if this is true is set this right here, player streak number, to be equal to our player streak, which we have not set yet. The other property that we want to set is the computer streak back to 0. If that's not the case, we need to set two other properties. It's going to be the opposite of what we just did above. The one thing that we need to do that we haven't done is update our player streak and our computer streak numbers. So we created those variables up here at the top, but we need to update that. Well, that's simple enough to do. We can do that within this right here. So each time the player wins, we can add 1 to that counter. And each time the computer wins, we can add 1 to that counter. The only thing that we have to do is if the computer wins, then we need to set the player streak at 0 and vice versa. If the player wins, we need to set the computer streak down to 0. So right here, we have our section for a player. And we're going to do the same thing for the computer section. All right, let's test and see if what we did works. So I've been clicking around and trying to figure out why when I ran the app, computer streak populated there and not the variable. And it was as simple as this right here. This is set to a string, not a variable. So now when I run the app, we can see now that I've done that the streaks recount. You might want to reset the counter here when you click play again, just like we did on the output over here to reset at 0 when you click that play again button. There's really a lot to this. The extension part of this project had us think just a little bit further. I would encourage you to click on the version history and reset this back to its default settings and rerun through this. I know I've said this in other videos. The point of this project is not for you to get a good grade. The point of this project is that you understand the features of code.org and the coding aspects that's involved with this project. Once you feel comfortable going through that and you've filled out the activity guide, go ahead and click finish.